The warrior was a living mountain, chitinous plates that shone like wet basalt, 4 arms ending in serrated claws, and eyes like coals in a whetstone face. He had hauled Lieutenant Mara Delling from the crashed shuttle and into the great chamber of the Lohran warship, where a ring of officers watched with curious malice. The air tasted of ozone and iron. A faint hum of power ran through the floor, as if the ship itself had started to listen. Mara's hands were cuffed with a device that bit into her wrists with a heat smell sting. Her uniform was shredded. Blood dried along the collarbone of her tactical vest. The human medbay on the shuttle had been a joke against the Lohran interceptors. And yet here she stood. "Kneel," the warrior repeated. The command vibrated through the chamber and translated into the throats of those who knew the Lohran tongue. Kneeling was their sign of submission. Kneeling meant ownership, tribute, the transfer of honor. Mara looked at the warrior's face and then at the ring of officers. She saw hunger and rage in them both, and a bristling thirst for a spectacle. She saw, too, the faint tremor of something else. Surprise. Humans were small and soft. They winced, they groaned, they obeyed. The spectacle would be short and bloody and glorious. She smiled. It was a small thing. One corner of her mouth, a flash of teeth, but it moved like a mirror in the warrior's eyes. Laughter or madness, they couldn't decide. Laughter meant disrespect. Madness meant unpredictability. Either would be useful at the end of a blade. "You are wounded," the warrior said. "Over-precise now. You should be afraid." "Maybe," Mara said. Her voice was rough from the crash, but there was a crispness to what she said, the way a person might say the time to a stranger on a bus. Or maybe I'm too stubborn to take orders from someone who thinks the only way to win is to piss people off. A ripple of sound, Lohran amusement, rolled through the chamber. The warrior's hands flexed. "You know our laws. You owe kneeling for your trespass." Mara's smile stayed. She turned her head and looked past the warrior to the high window of the chamber, beyond which the black sweep of space threaded with the pale lights of distant ships. "I don't kneel," she said simply. "Not for you. Not for anyone." Silence broadened like a tide. One of the officers tilted its head in a gesture Mara had seen before on zoo documents. Curiosity. Another produced a chittering sound that might have been a snarl. And then, unpredictably, the commander of the ring stepped forward. She was smaller than the warrior, lithe and dangerous, scales patterned like calligraphy. Her voice was silk over stone. "You are brave," the commander said. "Or stupid. Either will do." Mara leaned forward on the bench carved into the floor, feeling the cuffs burn cold under her skin. Her training told her to be careful. Every syllable counted. But until now, training had never considered the measure of a smile. She had been raised on stories where a human grin was a weapon no one expected. "Both," she said. "Brave and stupid." "Mostly stupid," the commander laughed, a dry wreath in the air. "Then die for entertainment." The warrior raised a blade that sang. The officers cheered. The chamber filled with the keen of sharpened steel, and the scent of fresh blood promised. Mara's smile widened, enough to show teeth. "Make it fast," she said. "I have things to do." The warrior leapt, a blur of limbs and weapons. The first strike came for her throat. It was elegant and designed to take the head off quick. Mara moved. She had no sophisticated tech now. The cuffs confiscated her belt and the med injects were smashed. Only the crude. Human things, a hard-won habit of reading people, a stubbornness of bone, and reflexes honed on fields far less glamorous than alien war chambers. She dipped, slipped a hand free by a practiced twist, and caught the warrior's wrist. The cuff screamed but did not fail. The warrior's second blade arced, and Mara used the pull to shift her balance, stepping into the creature's center of gravity. Close up, the Lohran's carapace was warm and textured. She could smell the brine of their blood, the metal in it. Her fingers found a seam near the shoulder joint, an old maintenance weakness she'd read in a salvage manual years ago. The warrior's roar turned into a gasp as she pushed and the joint spattered like an old hinge. The room froze that fraction too long. Mara used it. She wrenched the blade in a motion that was not yet killing, but enough to disarm. The warrior staggered, claws skittering on the deck. For a heartbeat, his massive body towered over her, and Mara looked him in the face. "You asked for a show," she said, panting. "You wanted spectacle." She threw the blade into the air. It spun, and then she caught it by the haft. The motion was fluid, human, ugly, and brilliant in a way that stunned them. The warrior blinked at the smallness of the hand, the surety with which it held metal. Then Mara laughed. Not a nervous twitch. Full, terrible, contagious. You wanted me to kneel, she continued, and her voice cut across the chamber. You want me to promise you something that isn't mine to promise. I won't kneel because I won't admit to a truth you pretend to have. The commander's smile had thinned. You speak oddly of truth. Your truth says there's a ladder and someone controls the top, Mara said. Human truth says the ladder was made by hands that looked a lot like mine, and sometimes we take the ladder apart, put it in the fireplace, and roast marshmallows on the embers. You have a ladder. You have power. You also have fear. A murmur went through the officers, the kind of shiver you get when a negotiator changes the subject from violence to vulnerability. Mara saw it and pushed. You don't know us, she said. You think kneeling makes us small? It doesn't, it's a position. People kneel because they must, and sometimes when you kneel, you see up someone else's sleeve. You learn how they breathe. You learn where the weak points are. The commander's voice was a low scratch. You would teach us how to hunt you better? No, Mara said. I'd teach you that hunting is a dull job if all you hunt is fear. You want us to kneel because you want to mark our submission, but I'd rather make a bargain. She stepped closer to the fallen warrior, the blade at her hip, her hands not shaking. You can take me and fine, but you kneel first. The chamber tilted as the officers digested the audacity. The warrior's chest heaved. His jaws clicked. You ask us to kneel to you? No, Mara said. I ask you to kneel with me. That's different. The commander's officers hissed protest, but the commander herself considered. Her species' rituals were rigid. To kneel was to show dominance over the kneeler. But the commander had lived long enough to understand spectacle. She, more than others, felt the currency of an audience. A mutual kneeling would be either an act of humiliation or the first scene of a story remembered as a lesson. How do you propose this? She asked. Mara's smile softened until it was almost humanly kind. You want obedience. Okay, here's a trade. You kneel, and I will show you an advantage. She glanced at the warrior, at the seam where she jammed her fingers. I am a soldier. I know improvisation. I know how to take a broken thing and make it sing. You have a fleet of ships that can reach places we never thought possible. We have guts and stubbornness and a curiosity that doesn't stop for your dossiers. We'll teach you to do things you've not imagined, and in exchange, you'll kneel once in front of your officers. Let both our people believe the story they want from that act, and in return, you leave our world alone for a month. 30 rotations. No raids, no claims. You practice a new story for 30 rotations, then we meet again. The council hissed like wind through bone. The commander's eyes narrowed, not with rage, but with calculation. You ask an armistice. For 30 rotations. Why should we trust you? Because, Mara said, we're better to have as friends than as your underfoot problem. Because you think kneeling will make us small, but it won't. Because we know how to make marshmallows out of ladders. Because if we try and fail, at least we tried. She looked directly at the warrior. Because you already lost a hand when you thought you had me. For the first time since Mara had been hauled in, the officers were genuinely unsure. A few of them had seen human settlers in the outer colonies, scrappy, inventive. Others thought of the cost of a prolonged fight with a species that refused to be predictable. The commander's gaze flicked to the window at the black sweep of void. She felt the smallness of her position, too. To command a fleet meant making hard choices. A month's armistice would give her time to consolidate, to learn what this insolent, stubborn creature offered, or to betray them in a better prepared manner later. She turned her head slowly and spoke in a voice that had the weight of decision. You give us a lesson in your stubbornness, human. We give you 30 rotations, and on the day you choose, we meet again. Mara nodded. Deal! The commander stepped forward and lowered herself until her forehead nearly kissed the deck. She looked up, and for a breathless moment, the ring of officers exhaled as if the universe had tilted. The warrior, wounded, humiliated, raging, found his own pride shackled by the drag of ritual. He set his knees down in the scar of the deck and aligned himself with his leader. Mara blinked. She lowered herself too, not to touch the deck, but to place one hand over her heart in a gesture that wasn't kneeling in their terms, and yet had the gravity of a pledge. The cameras of the Loran fleet recorded it. The murmurs of the onlookers filled the ship like new music. It was not a human kneel. It was a compromise, a mutual recognition that